Okay, thank you everybody for joining. This is using a shared user file in the Network Zone Consortia. This is part of our series, the series on the ALMA Network Zone Consortia. This is the series here. Most of you are familiar with this page because we know you've registered from this page. I'm going to send out in the chat in any case a link to this page. Those of you watching the YouTube recording will see a link to this page in the description of the video. So let's see where we are here now as far as the whole series. So we're not looking at this in a vacuum. So end of May, we had a general introduction just to make sure we're all on the same page, the ALMA Collaborative Network and the shared catalog in a Network Zone Consortia. Then we had Moshe with us, who we've also got today, the ALMA Fulfillment Network and a Network Zone Consortia. Then I spoke about managing the electronic resources in the consortia using the inventory network groups. And here we are today using a shared user file in the Network Zone Consortia. We've got plenty more planned. July 3rd, we've got ALMA Analytics for the Network Zone Consortia. Then we've got something new, the Consortia Central Configuration Dashboard for distributing shared configuration across members. This is brand new. In fact, this session here is both part of this webinar series, which is the ALMA Network Zone Consortia webinar series, and it's also part of the ALMA 2024 Roadmap webinar series, which I know from the attendees here, many of you are also attending that series. So we're covering that in both. It's part of the Network Zone series because it deals specifically with the Network Zone. It's part of the Roadmap webinar series because it's brand new for 2024. In fact, it hasn't been released at this stage. Then towards the end of July, we've got restricting bibliographic fields by member institutions of a Network Zone Consortia. So when there's a bibliographic record shared with the network, you can prevent members from editing certain fields. Then we've got the use of local extensions for member institutions of the Network Zone Consortia. This one we started to show in an earlier session, but we really didn't have time, so we're going to do a dedicated session. So we hope to see you in all of these sessions. This page here contains also the accompanying material. So Moshe, for example, will be showing part of his session in a PowerPoint. You've got links to the PowerPoints here. The recordings are in the recordings column here. So after this session, there'll be a link here to the recording, just like there is for all previous sessions. A reminder that on our customer education webinars page, you can also register and you can view recordings. For example, here's next week's ALMA Analytics for Network Zone Consortia upcoming, and you can register here. And you can also filter, for example, by on demand or facet by on demand. Here's last week's session on demand, and you can click here to watch it now. So you've got a wide variety of ways to register and to view the recordings. You can also go directly to YouTube to view the recordings. So we're joined now by or with Maud Arnaud from ALMA Product Management, as well as Moshe Schechter from ALMA Product Management. And I will be monitoring the chat. Maud will also be monitoring the chat. And if you have any questions, comment, feel free to send them in. And without further ado, Moshe, I'm going to hand this over to you and take it away.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, I'll share my screen and we'll start right away. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now.
We see your screen and hear you well.
Right, thank you. Hey, so thank you for joining us for this session about a shared user file in a Network Zone Consortia. Actually, our discussion is going to be about sharing of users across a network. The Network Zone will just be one flavor of how users can be shared across a network. We'll talk about different models for that. And a very important term that we'll keep referring to is linked accounts. Linked accounts are basically a way to share accounts across a network. So we're discussing a situation where a patron belongs to a specific institution, is registered at a specific institution, but can receive services across the network at other institutions. To facilitate that, Alma makes use of this concept of a linked account, which is actually a copy of the original account that is copied over to another institution where the patron would like to receive services. So we're calling this linked account, and there could be a number of models for how that linked account can be created and managed. That's These are the issues that we'd like to discuss today. Um, so we'll go into a few models. They're going to be model 1, 2, and 3. All of them have in common that they serve this scenario where a patron that is registered at a specific institution, let's call it institution A, would like to receive services from institution B where the patron account does not exist. So let's talk about these models, and we'll start with the one that I've just called absolutely randomly model 1. Uh, in Model 1, which is probably the most common way to share user information across a network, we have a user account that is registered at institution A. That's where the patron account exists. And that's where the patron can log into a Primo, for example, to place requests or whatever the patron would like to do in Primo. In this use case, the patron would then use a discovery to go on and search for records that are owned by institution B. So we're talking about a scenario where there's a shared discovery here. This shared discovery can be based on a network zone or without a network zone, based on a discovery network, as we call it. In either case, there's a shared discovery. So the patron can log into institution A, but still do a search and find records that are owned by institution B. When the patron then places a request or would like to place a request at the institution B record, that's when this linked account is being created. The linked account is actually a copy of the original account, of the source account. We'll talk about the details of how exactly this account is created, what information exactly it includes. But generally, for the purpose of our discussion right now, it is a copy of the original account, and Alma also maintains an internal link between the linked account and the source original account. This internal link enables Alma to maintain synchronization between these accounts so that if there's any update to the original account, such as an email change at the um, institution A, at the home institution, that email information will also propagate to the linked account at institution B in our example. So we're not going into the details of how exactly the discovery looks like, and that's a different discussion. We only want to focus on the aspects of the user management. But in any case, the result of this is that there are two accounts owned by the same person. Alma and Primo know it is the same person, although there are technically two accounts in the database, one in the source institution A and one in the target institution B. Another scenario where this can happen when the patron does not place a request, does not use a shared discovery. They may even not be a shared discovery, but rather the patron directly walks into a library at institution B and just wants to check out an item. So the patron comes to the circulation desk, says, I'm an institution A patron, here's my ID. Scanning that ID, again, will result in a linked account being created at institution B, and that linked account, again, being linked back to the source institution A account, so that, again, synchronizations can take place updates to the account that happen at A flow into institution B. And again, we'll talk about the details of what information flows, when it flows. We just want to sketch out what it looks like and the general architecture of how this works. Okay, in this model that we've been discussing until now, there's actually a primary account and a secondary account. Okay, so if we refer back to the use case that we are going through, the primary account is the institution A account. That's where the account is actually managed. For example, the SIS feeds are happening at institution A. The other updates are taking place at institution A. That's the institution that the patron is affiliated with. The institution B account is what we call the secondary record because the SIS feeds, the updates do not happen at institution B. The institution B account was created on the fly while placing a request or checking out an item, and it is actually a copy of the institution A account, again with that internal link that enables the updates to flow from the primary account to the secondary account. Okay, so that's the general model. The updates that I'm referring to happen or actually are pulled by institution B when the patron is active at institution B. So that means that when the patron either places a request on an institution B record or checks out an institution B item, that's when institution B refers back to institution A and pulls that information, obviously automatically. Um, but that means, and what I'm trying to emphasize here, is that the updates do not happen the moment they happen at institution A. So consider the following example. Patron is registered at institution A. On May 1st, the patron checks out an item from institution B, and a linked account is created at institution B on May 1st. On June 1st, the patron, some updates happens at institution A. Let's say the email account has been updated at institution A. The information does not yet, the update does not yet flow into institution B. So institution B does not yet have that update. However, if on July 1st, the patron walks into institution B and checks out an item or uses Primo to place a request, that's when the update will be pulled from institution B, from institution A into institution B, and the correct email will be updated. So the updates do not happen at real time when they take place at institution A, only when the patron is active at institution B. That's one of the things that we're planning to improve about the way that network accounts are managed, but the current status is as I've just described to you. Okay, so that's about the general layout, how these accounts are managed and how the refreshes happen. A few words about the data that is actually shared in this model. As far as the user information that is shared, that is copied from A to B, it is basically the general information. So all of the information that is in the user form in the general tab, that includes information like name, of course, of the patron. It includes information like if you manage a gender or a title or other information that is on the general tab of the user form, in addition to the contact information, which is the second tab on the user form. That's where the emails, physical address, and phone numbers, if you manage them, are managed, and they get also copied from A to B. There's another option to also share blocks. By sharing blocks, I'm referring to an option to create persistent blocks at institution A. So persistent blocks, I mean blocks that you create explicitly using the blocks tab in the user form. These blocks can be created at institution A, either manually at the library or come through an SIS feed at institution A, In either case, they are persistent blocks. They are block records registered for the patron account. And what I'm excluding here is on-the-fly kind of blocks. For example, if the patron has reached a loan limit or a cash limit, these are not the blocks we're talking about. But those persistent blocks can also be shared, that is, copied from institution A to institution B. I will not go into the full details of how that can be done. There's a link to another presentation that describes the entire setup. But just for you to know, you can create persistent blocks at the source institution, and they can also propagate to the target institutions. Also note that it is currently only in this direction. So persistent blocks can propagate to the uh, um, to the uh, um, secondary accounts, but the blocks at the secondary accounts do not propagate to the source account. So it only the primary blocks that can propagate on to other institutions, but not blocks at the secondary accounts.
Moshe, this might be a good time to jump in with two questions, if I may. Two questions that came in the chat. Or would you
Sure.
like to wait?
No, sure.
Okay, so the first one is, if not addressed later in the presentation, what happens if the user is made inactive or deleted from institution A and they already had a checkout at institution B? What happens if they go to institution B and they try to check out a second item?
Okay. So excellent question. So the the two accounts at institution, at the source and at the target, or the primary, secondary, whichever way you want to term it, are actually independent accounts, um, which means that if there is a primary account to pull information from, then that will happen. But potentially you can have the source account even deleted, and that will not affect the target institution. It will not affect the secondary account. These are separate independent accounts. There is this internal link that enables the sync to take place, but they're still independent accounts. It means that it is up to the institution B, in our use case, the secondary accounts institution, to run its own independent purge jobs to remove these accounts at whatever policy they have, which fits nicely into the second part of this slide down here, and that is that um, the secondary institution, institution B, let's again for simplicity call it that, institution B can set up rules that determine when accounts are copied over to my institution, how will the expiry date and purge date be calculated? So for example, you can set up rules to say that the account will be copied over and be purged a year later, have a purge date for a year later. The account will be purged only when the purge job is run at institution B, and the purge date on the linked account um, is in the past, so the purge job will grab that record and try to purge it. Like any local purge, it will purge only an account that does not have any local liabilities, so it will not purge an account that has a loan or a fee, etc. So in short, these are accounts that are linked, but are independent accounts, and each institution can manage the accounts and should manage the accounts independently from the other.
Okay, thank you, Moshe. Okay, the other request was for a link you had on slide 8, and Maud already added that link into the.
Okay, thank you.
It says, can you share in the chat the link from slide 8 that has more information about the blocks?
So this one. Yeah, okay, so we'll put that.
Yeah, put that in the chat if you could, Moshe,
Okay,
because that's going to the online help, not to a PowerPoint, as far as I know. Okay.
okay. So I'll put it in right afterwards because now I have a little
Yeah.
difficulty accessing that. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Actually, I can put it in. I got your slides. I'll put it in.
Okay. Um, so the other bits here is that the institution B can also determine using rules what user group the account will be assigned at institution B. For example, a classic use would be to have all these guest accounts be created with a user group that says guest account. And then going back to that purge scenario, could have a purge job running at institution B that says purge all accounts that have a user group of a guest account and their purge date is in the past. And this will be your routine way to remove these accounts from your local institution B. Okay, and one more piece of information here is about the institution A in our story, which can also determine what information will actually be shared. For example, if institution A has a strict privacy policy, then it could configure rules that would say institution B will only get the patron name and email and none of the other information which we consider private and should not be shared. Name and email would probably be the minimal information that you would need to share with another institution to enable a proper fulfillment interaction to take place. But institution A has control of its users' information and can set up what elements of the user information will be shared, and also which user accounts, which user groups will be exposed. So if there are some user groups that you do not want to allow to expose, they can also be blocked by an institution A side configuration. I'm not going into the details of those, but I can refer you to another presentation that was presented on this series a few weeks ago. That was a presentation about the automated fulfillment network. And there we also went into some details about the configuration of the linked accounts, including these rules that I've just been talking about. So here I just wanted to mention these, but you can refer to more information on that session's recording or the slides for more information about those rules. Okay, so one last word about this model, which is again is a very popular model because it enables sharing user information across the network without having to maintain these accounts. They're created on the fly. They can be managed separately by every institution, be purged separately, and be tracked at each institution separately. It enables that refresh to take place and enables in Primo this unified My Account that we're seeing right now. Because Alma has that internal link between these accounts, the patron logs into, say, the Alma University, which is the patron's home institution. Alma and Primo know that the account at the Open University belong to the same person. And therefore, even though our patron logged into Alma University, Primo can show the patron more information from their account at the Open University because it is linked and Alma knows it's the same person. What this model described to you is a just-in-time creation of the account in the other institutions, in the secondary institutions. That's what characterizes this model. The second model is what we call a consortial ID. In this scenario, you configure an ID that is unique across the network if you have such an ID. So if, let's say, there is a student number that you upload into the system and you know that there are no two students anywhere in your network that have the same student number, then you can configure the student number to be a consortial ID. If you are using a consortial ID, it must basically be the primary ID. You can, on top of that, add another student ID that would be a consortial ID, but you do have to use the primary ID as the basic consortial ID. So if you know about such an ID, you should use it as the primary ID. And the way that this is managed is that when records are uploaded into different institutions with the same primary ID, Alma knows that if the setup has been activated, these accounts are owned by the same person. Alma knows it because these accounts have the same primary ID, and the consortial unique ID configuration has been set up. So this model is different than the previous one in that these accounts are not created just in time when the patron checks out an item or creates a request. Instead, in this model, the accounts are actually loaded um, in separate SIS feeds, one into institution A, another into institution B, and Alma knows it's the same person, but that's based on that common ID. So this would be a use where you have uh, potentially a shared user file managed in some other central location, and you can pull accounts from that central registry and upload them into the different institutions where you want the patron information to be available. You upload them with the same ID, and there you go. The patron has multiple accounts, all owned by the same patron. This model, which is a less popular one, um, does not have this notion of a primary account and a secondary account because both accounts have been imported into the system so that you can think of them as both as primary accounts. They're each managed by their own SIS feed. So there are no synchronizations happening between one and the other. If information needs to be updated in these accounts, it needs to be updated separately in each one of them. There's no primary to serve as the source of updates to the other accounts. Um, and as we mentioned, there will be this unified Primo because Alma and Primo know it's the same person. And in this case, you can preload these accounts. Being able to preload these accounts means that patrons may log in to each of those institutions using local LDAPs because they have a pre-existing account already existing in each one of these institutions.
So Moshe, that option, if that is not possible if the institution is not using unique identifiers like an America Social Security number or something?
Right. So this depends on having that consortially unique ID. And if you don't have that, then this model is not for you. Okay. Okay, so we talked about these accounts being independent from one another. We answered the question about that a few minutes ago. So a few insights about what we've just described, these two models, before we go into the third model. And that is that model one, which is again the more popular way to do that, is kind of an easier way to manage network accounts because there's only one place where the patron information is managed. The SIS feeds happen only in one place. That's the primary account where the patron is the patron main affiliation or the only affiliation. Updates happen just in time. So when the patron needs to get a service at another institution, that's when the information flows to the other institution. That's what characterizes model one. Model two would be where you have this consortial ID. So there's some sense of central management here. There is probably some shared users repository that is the source of both accounts, and that's why it has a unique ID. And you can upload those accounts into the different institutions. However, in the case of Model 2, you're actually uploading accounts a number of times, both institution A and institution B. So there are two SIS feeds that need to happen, and you need to routinely update both institutions, and there's no automatic refresh. Ideally, if you do have this sense of a central user management file, central location where you manage all of your user accounts, and is where you can have this consortial unique ID derived from, would be much better if you could upload that user account only once and have it be used by all the institutions in the network instead of having to manage or upload the accounts multiple times at multiple institutions. And this is where the third model, which is the central model, comes to place. In this model, we will be updating the user accounts only in one place, and that place will be the network zone. So this model is a fit for networks that have a network zone. So if the network already has a network zone because it does shared cataloging and other types of shared network zone type of services, then you have a network zone. Then you could use that network zone also to be that central repository of user information that will be used by all of the other institutions. So let's go on and talk a bit about this model. Okay, so in this model, we're talking about the network zone serving as the central repository for the user information, meaning there is one SIS feed in the entire network. So if you're a network of 40 institutions, you still use one SIS feed only, and that SIS feed is done at the network zone. No need for feeds at any of the other institutions. However, based on that feed that happened at the network zone, all of the institutions can access and make use of these user accounts. So it is as if virtually you did one SIS feed to the network zone, but virtually, actually, you uploaded the user information to all of the institutions. The accounts were not created at the other institutions, but the central accounts are usable by the other institutions. So it is as if you virtually loaded these accounts to the other institutions. Okay, so in terms of the data, what happens is that when the user is active at any of the institutions, and active goes back to what we discussed before. Active means that there's a loan being done at one of the institutions or a request being done at one of the institutions. We'll see examples of that in a few minutes. So when the patron is active at any of these institutions, the account will be physically copied by Alma from the network zone into the institution, and it will happen just in time, on the fly, when the patron is active at the target institution. And this goes back to what I was saying before. It is physically loaded into the network zone, but you can think of it as if it's been virtually uploaded to all of the institutions, because all of the institutions can access this account when they need it. For example, for checking out an item to the patron or placing a request. In addition, every update that happens to the account at the network zone propagates to the institutions that took a copy of this account, that copied this account. So the feeds, the updates happen centrally at the network zone and are automatically propagated to each one of the institutions. And this is very much like, you can think of this from the specific institution's perspective. It is much like external accounts coming in from an SIS, right? If you think about an account created at the institution from a feed from the SIS, you have your account, which is an external account, at your institution. The source of this account is the SIS feed. You can create additional local segments on this external account in the institution. Feeds coming from the SIS update the external segments, but don't touch the local segments, the internal segments. The same exact model is here. The only difference is that from the institution perspective, the updates are not coming from a direct SIS feed to the institution, but rather from the network zone, which is where the SIS feeds took place. But if you think about this this equivalence of a external account at the institution updated from an SAS and a local account at the institution updated from a network zone, and you think of them as pretty much the same concept, then you got a good picture of how this would work. So let's take a look at a few diagrams that will help demonstrate that, and also take a look at some real examples.
Maybe before we do that, Moshe, would be a good time for another question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. All right. I'll read it. You know what? It's kind of long. I think I'm going to post it into a Word document like last time and share my screen. I think that'll be easier because it's quite long. So I will share my screen. I've already got it in the Word document, and then we can see it. Okay. Share. Okay, there's the question. I'll make it even larger. Go ahead, you can read it.
Okay, so what happens in model one, where the scenario that a user from institution A borrows something from institution B and gets secondary current to institution B. Institution then deletes the user primary account. The user then goes to institution C and says, I have an account at institution B. Okay, and the user, yes, they're not yet purged account institution B, they get a secondary account institution C. So the question is, yes, that will work. From that point on, the institution B account will be considered the primary account for the institution C account. And updates that happen at the institution B will flow into institution C, because now institution B is a primary for institution C.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm
nice
going
one.
to stop sharing. Take it away again.
All right, okay. Okay, that should be the screen. All right, okay, so we should be sharing again. Okay, so going back to this diagram, we have the network zone up here. There's an SAS feed, and I'm talking about SAS feed. As we'll see, it does not have to be an SAS feed. It could be other ways to manage accounts at the network zone. But for simplicity, let's talk about an SAS feed, which will be probably the more common way to do that. An SAS feed creates the account here, the network zone. The account does not exist at institution A or institution B until the patron does something at institution A. For example, the patron comes to a circulation desk and swipes their ID, or the patron wants to place a request through Alma, or wants to log in to institution A. Now, in case of login, I'm specifically referring to situations where there is an SSO type of login, a shibboleth, for example. So the patron is actually doing their authentication against the shibboleth. And the way it works is that when the shibboleth authentication process ends successfully, it sends the authenticated ID to Alma. And Alma, if will not find that ID to already exist in the database, will automatically pull that from the network zone. So in reality, the patron was able to log into institution A based on credentials that are managed in the shibboleth and an account that was created in the network zone, and Alma will take care of the rest. It will copy the records from the network zone into the institution at login time. If the patron will then be active again at institution A, then the account already in institution A will be used. Updates will flow from the network zone to the institution A account when they happen at the network zone. So unlike that model one, where we said only when the patron is active at institution B, updates will be pulled. In this case, actually, the updates are pushed from the network zone the moment that they are updated at the network zone. I'm saying the moment, it's not exactly the moment. It could take up to a few minutes. There's an asynchronous process that runs in the network zone that identifies the updates that have happened and accumulates a few of them before it sends it out to the institutions. It normally may take up to a few minutes, but not more than that, for the information to propagate, the changes to propagate from the network zone to institution A. But notice that throughout this use case, institution B has no information about this account because the patron didn't ask for any services at institution B. Of course, if the patron would walk into institution B desk and require services at the circulation desk or place a request, then there will be also an account at institution B, but not at institution C, and so on and so forth. If the patron already has accounts at institution A and B, updates from the network zone will flow to both of them, but not to institution C. Now, if we understood that concept of these accounts here at the institutions being like SAS accounts, they're external accounts, their source is the network zone, but other than that, they behave like any other external account, then the rest is easy to understand. Um, For example, you can create local updates or local internal segments to the account at the institution B in this example. For example, create an internal email for the patron at institution B. When a synchronization comes from the network zone, it will overrun only the email that was pushed from the network zone. It will not overrun the internal email address that was created as a local update, just like you would in case of an SAS. Same concept. Like we mentioned, the purge here too is a local process. So institution B can purge its own accounts using its own purge job, and institution A would manage its own account. And there's no purging at the network zone that would purge these accounts at the institutions. The moment the records have been pulled into the institution, they are owned by the institution and required to be purged at the institution. And this does not contradict the institutions from being able to create additional local users. So at institution A, I can have a bunch of accounts that were copied over from the network zone and get updated from the network zone. They are all external accounts. But in addition, in parallel, the institution can have other internal accounts that are not coming from the network zone and are managed as internal accounts. Again, just like the institution can have external accounts coming from an SAS feed alongside internal accounts managed locally at the library. Same exact concept. So if you understood this concept, then the rest is pretty clear and straightforward.
So Moshe, there's one file being imported into Alma at the network zone. That's the only place the sys feed is running, the integration profile of type user.
Exactly, yes.
And then it just syncs out. That seems most efficient of
Yes,
these three models you showed.
definitely. This obviously means that you have a shared single source that you can upload into the network zone as opposed to a model one, which is more overfit when you don't have this centralized one place, one repository for user accounts. Each institution does its own thing. But I agree. If you have a shared repository of users, it would be most efficient to just import it into the network zone and have Alma do the rest. Okay, so we were talking about how the uh, updates at the network zone happen through an SAS feed.
Moshe,
As I
let's just stop 1 second because the question is on that previous system, the previous method. Someone asks, how do the synced users count against the internal user account limits?
am not sure that I understand what you mean by internal account limits. Maybe you could elaborate a bit on that.
When there's, I'm going to ask, not related to, maybe related to his question or her question. When the synchronization occurs, are those considered external users or internal users at the member institutions?
So anything that is pulled from the network zone are external accounts at the institution.
Okay, so then the question I think would be not relevant because the question is, but person who asked a question, feel free to clarify, asks, how do the synced users count against internal user accounts? But you're saying they're going to be external anyway, so it would
Correct.
be
Yeah,
irrelevant.
it's like SAS feeds. It's updating external accounts. Um, uh, creating and updating external accounts, just like an
Uh-huh.
SAS feed would.
Okay, let's go on.
Okay, at the network zone, um, the accounts I was describing for the sake of simplicity, and I think it would be probably the more common way is that at the network zone you have accounts managed through an SAS feed, but it does not have to be this way. You can manage uh, um, the accounts at the network zone through APIs. You can create manual accounts, internal accounts at the network zone. You can update via the update notify users job at the network zone. So it doesn't really matter how the accounts are managed at the network zone. Um, in any of these scenarios, updates would flow onto the copies that are created at the institution, at the separate institutions. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And another is that um, there may, for the accounts in the network zone and the accounts in the institution zone to be linked, for these updates to flow, there's obviously some internal links that Alma maintains that enables Alma to know this account at the network zone and these accounts at the IZs are actually the same person. This can break at times. Um, Classic scenario that I've seen this happen is where accounts were created mistakenly, perhaps, at the institution before they were actually created at the network zone for whatever reason. And the result is that we have a network account and a local institution account that are disconnected. There is a job that can run at the network zone that fixes those broken links. It's called the link institution zone users to centralize network zone users. It runs at the network zone. And it will be recommended to have that run routinely at the network zone. A term I like using is kind of a garbage collector. It kind of runs through the network, finds these accounts that have the same ID, the same primary ID in the network zone and the institutions, and tell Alma, hey, this is the same account, and that enables the next updates to flow from the network zone to the IZs. So I would recommend having this job run. It just prevents scenarios where something got broken between those accounts and make sure the system continues to work smoothly. Now, one more comment I want to make before we go to take a look at some examples is that it is possible to create the account or register the account at the IZ and push it to the NZ, resulting in an IZ and NZ records that are actually linked. Um, you know that from the circulation desk in Alma, you have an option to register a new user. And when you register a new user, you can create this account as an externally managed one. In case of a shared user file, it will push that account into the network zone, resulting in an account linked from the network zone to the institution zone. This can be done when you create the account, when you register it for the first time. However, updates to the accounts, subsequent updates to the accounts must happen at the network zone. You cannot update in the institution zone and expect those updates to propagate to the network zone and from there to the rest of the institutions. It does not work in this way. You can only, the initial creation can be done at the institution and be pushed in this way to the network zone, but not the subsequent updates. We have enough time, then I hope to be able to also show you this. So I'll skip over a few slides here and
We're at the 10-minute warning now, Moshe.
yeah, so let's take a look at some
Do you
clips
want
here
a
that are,
question about the central model before we jump into this part? Is there a mechanism, tool, or system for consortia to use to merge sys feeds from their member institutions to create a single sys feed? Ooh.
sorry, can you perhaps say that again? I'll try.
Yeah, it sounds like
Understand.
the person wants to take the input files of the integration profile of type user from all of the member institutions and combine them into one file in order to upload them all at once. Is that correct, person who asked it? Yes.
and to upload all of those into the network zone.
Yeah, as one file. Combine them all. Something to
Um,
combine all the XML files of all of the member
yeah,
institutions.
I mean, the way that Alma does not care how you create the file that you upload into the network zone. So if you have all those separate SAS feeds and you have unique ID, because that will be, of course, mandatory for that to work. So you have a unique ID for each account in these separate files. So you can merge them into one big file that has unique IDs for each one of the accounts. No two people with the same IDs. You can create this network zone file, and then you can run that job that would link those accounts from the NZ to the IZ, and by that create your central repository in the NZ, even though you have already uploaded those accounts to the specific institutions. That should work. Okay, let's run through a quick scenario here. I'm now at my institution, and here's my network. I'm showing now that I have this account at the network. This is running a little quickly because we really don't have much time. Um, and what I'm showing now is the SAS feed that will be run here at the network. So you notice I'm at the network. I have an SAS integration profile here, which is the one that I will be running to import a user account to my network zone. Okay, so I'm at the network zone, and this is my SAS integration profile. I will just run it. Running this, by the way, this is the configuration. What you're seeing now is the configuration of the shared users. This third model, just in the network zone, you set up the institutions to be shared users. But really quickly, and I apologize for this being real quick, but you can, refer back to these clips afterwards. So we have this account now created at the network zone. So here is our account created at the network zone. If I move to the institution zone and I search for this account, I will not find it. It does not exist in the institution. This is my institution. But I can search for it as a network. You notice this icon for network search. I can search in the network, find this from the network, and then localize the account, create it as a local account. That's one way to explicitly pull the account from the network zone into the institution. Probably not the classic way you would do that, but just for you to know, you could do that. So you see it's pulling the account from the network zone. You can just go on and I'll save it locally, and it's going to be saved. It pulls all the information. Notice the user group information. Because these are accounts coming from the network zone into the institution, it means that codes such as user groups need to be aligned between the institution and the network zone. You have to have the same codes at the network and institution, for example, for user group, because the information comes as is from the network. Okay, so here's our account. I will now go on and delete this account, the local account, because I want to show you how it's created from the circulation desk. So I'm deleting this local account. And now we'll go to the circulation desk. So the account is deleted. It's no longer here at the institution. Now I'll go to the circulation desk. And here I can use the account that currently exists only in the network zone as if it's already a local account. So I can search for it and I can use this account and go on and check out to this patron. So even though the account exists only in the network zone, by doing this, actually the account was copied over to my local institution. So now the account does exist as a local account because I used this account at the circulation desk. Behind the scenes, it did that copying that I mentioned. So this actually demonstrates how the account exists in the network zone, but is usable at the institution zone. You can just go to the circulation desk and just use this account as if it is already a local account, and that will result in a local account indeed being created. So let's try to run through another quick clip here before we end.
3-minute warning, Moshe.
Okay, so we can take a look at how local updates are happening. I'm now in Primo, and I'm going to update my details. I'm changing my address, adding the words from Primo to my address. And this is an account that has been pulled from the network zone. Looking at the institution zone account, we will see that the Primo update, to edit on this, we see that the Primo update created another internal address alongside the external one that came from the NZ. There's this internal one you see from Primo, it's an internal account. At the network zone, remember I'm at the network zone now. If we take a look at this account at the network zone, then nothing has changed about this network zone account. It still has only one contact information, and it has not been changed. Okay, so no from Primo here. What I'll do now is I'll go in and change my my SIS feed. I'm actually changing the XML of the SIS feed, adding the word changed. I'm saving this as a zip file, and then I'll take it on to my FTP. Let's do that quickly. I'm putting it in my FTP site. It's the FTP that I was using here for this test. And after the FTP transfer completes, we can go back to the network zone and run our SIS feed once again. What we expect is that the address at the SIS, at the NZ changes. We get that word changed added to the address information. So let's run it here at the network zone. And once it is complete at the network zone, we will see that the account at the network zone is updated. Let's take a look at that. Okay. So here's the changed address. What we want to see now is what happens at the IZ. The information will propagate to the IZ. As I mentioned before, it could take up to a few minutes, so it doesn't happen instantly, but it normally does not take more than a few minutes. Okay, so the update did not happen yet, and I'll be running this a few minutes ahead, which is after we can see the update happening. So in the IZ, the update happened, but the local address was not changed. So the external one is changed, but the one that was updated from Primo does not change. That shows that idea of a external one from the NZ and the local one from the IZ, the external one being updated from the NZ, but the internal one not being touched by the NZ feed. Okay, I think we will end just on time now.
Yes, yes, just on time. In fact, we have 1 minute if you have anything else to say.
Okay, there's another clip here if you want to take a look at how you can push records from the IZ to the NZ, but because it is the top of the hour.
Okay, well, everyone has access to this. Okay, so everybody, we will be posting the recording as usual. It will be available, as we saw, from the webinars consortia page, from the webinar series page, also from the education webinars page, also from the YouTube channel, and we'll be sending out a notification on that. So thanks, everybody, and we hope to see you next week. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.